warms me like 5 seconds after. So
yeah.
There we go.
It's so good to see your face.
Hello. It's been a hot minute, guys. Welcome back. Sorry, not sorry. We've both been busy with like other creative projects. And our beautiful Erin keeps getting casted in shows. So we're finally here to discuss 2 books. We're going to discuss Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer and Firestarter by the one and the only Stephen King. But Erin, do you want to tell everybody why you've been gone and what you've been doing?
So I've just been doing all sorts of really cool things, which is very fun. Let's see. I just wrapped. I had the Mad Hatter's Gin and Tea Party, which closed last month, which is a fever event that's touring the company. So wherever you are, it'll probably end up there. Then I wrapped my film, The Ballot Box. It's an indie comedy where I play a feminist communist. It's very humorous. And that'll be coming out in November. I don't know where. We're trying to sell it.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and then I opened Much Ado About Nothing last night in Grapevine. It was 104 degrees outside. Even at 9 o'clock at night, it was 99 degrees. And it's even hotter today. So second show, very excited.
Are you coming outside? Oh.
Yeah, it's very warm. And we're in, old school costumes. So that means velvet and wool.
Yeah.
So much fun.
All the authentic smells of the time. I can see it now.
I know. And then House of Spirits is starting up in September. Yes. And it is expanding to a bunch more shows in like Tennessee and Georgia and Florida, and as well as LA, New York, and Dallas.
Fabulous.
So yeah, very exciting. What about you, my love?
I have been working on getting some writing things continued. Thank you for following Joseph Greenwood. I just saw you pop up on there. Also, if you're watching us live, pop into the comments, say hi. We'd love to say hi back. What else have I been? Oh, I did Comic-Con, which was super fun. So I pulled out a Scarlet Witch cosplay and was like, boom. And that was fun. I was like, I wish I could just throw lightning at people. Some days I just wish I could just throw lightning at people. That has been most of what I've been doing. I've been working on some like smaller voiceover, just personal objectives of my own. And yeah, those seeds are planted. We will watch the beautiful tree that they've become.
Yes.
That's about me. But enough about me. Joseph, we're doing great. We're both performing pretty regularly. The sun is shining. It's very hot in both places.
Futures. Beautiful thing. That's what I say.
And Joseph, if you are new here, this is our little book movie club where we discuss books and the movies that they were made into and vent about whether we liked it or not. Usually we don't.
A lot of venting.
Usually we don't. But today we're going to start out. We kind of have a double feature because we missed our June episode because of performance schedules. So we're going to start out with Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. And spoiler alert, we will be discussing the entire book of both of these. So if you really want to know what the ending is organically by reading it, come back and watch this after you've read it. If you don't care, continue watching with us. And if you have read either of these and you have your own things to vent about, please, we would love to hear your thoughts. But brief 30-second summary of Annihilation. I know you didn't like this one as much. Do you want to do it or do you want me to do it?
I'll give the thing. So
I'm going to cut you off at 30 seconds.
Great. Okay, so there are scientist ladies who go into this mysterious weird zone, kind of dystopian stuff. There are weird creatures that may or may not be human. People get infected and die and change, and it's weird.
Yes, that is the extent of this book. It is weird, and it is very much like science we don't understand, aliens?
Maybe. I just don't. It's just. It's an area X. We don't know what's going on or why it's happening, but everything's weird. That's the best. That's they don't explain why this happened or when it happened or how it happened. It's just like, ooh, bad stuff. I don't.
It had a very old school sort of horror tone to me in like old like Lovecraft almost, where we've got this situation and no one really knows why, but you know it's bad. And I thought it was kind of interesting in the book. The book is very like myopic. It's one person's perspective. It's basically like her journal. So all you know is what she knows.
And it's very scientific. It's not got a lot of feels to it. It's very much observation.
It's very observational, but from inside of her head, and she's a scientist with training in psychology. So she's got like you track her psychological breakdown as she watches the people around her die.
Yeah.
And kill each other and kill themselves, which is interesting, caused by this thing as she thinks that it's taking her over. So she's not even sure what is her anymore and what or them, her crewmates, and what is this thing that in the book manifests itself as weird creatures, but also mostly as mold, which surprised me because I saw the movie first.
Yeah.
And then I saw the movie like way back when it came out, and it was funny watching it over again because it's like the entire cast of Star Wars and Marvel movies right now. Like all of these people were no-name actors at the time, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Valkyrie, and it's like,
except for good old
Lady Thor and
what's her name? The lady who's really famous in it.
Natalie Portman.
Yes, Natalie Portman. Yeah.
Oh wait, I always get her mixed up. Hold on. Is it Natalie Portman?
No, it's Natalie Portman.
I think so.
Yes. Is it like a confusing but fun type of book? I wouldn't describe it as fun necessarily, more confusing than anything. Yeah, I just thought it was weird. I didn't really understand it. I was intrigued enough that I kept going with it because I'm like, where is this gonna go? Because it was just like, oh, there's a squishy, blobby, slimy figure that may be the bad guy that apparently is also very poetic because it's writing stuff in a tunnel on the walls, and the walls may be human fleshy living things, but apparently it can melt people. Like, that's the kind of confusing that it is.
Yeah, it's very if you have read Lovecraft, if you have read Edgar Allan Poe, it pulls a lot from that and sort of this theme of like madness being observed through the lens of science, which takes all of the emotions out of the madness, but is very unsettling. It also made it difficult to connect with the characters because there are no feels.
They don't even have names.
Yeah. So you kind of have a storyline with her where she remembers her partner, her romantic partner, who went into this Area X because he and she are both military. They both went in to like try to see what this was. Because apparently the area is growing. So the U.S. military is like, that's not good. But no one ever comes out.
But of course, per U.S. military, they don't give a crap about the people. They just send them in.
Go find it.
They either die in there or kill each other, or they come back and they die outside of the area.
Yeah. So it's weird. I think it's part of a trilogy. There's 3 books about it. So I have a strong feeling that this may be his like act 1, if we're talking about like a 3-act structure for stories. So I think there may be more resolution. So if you like weird stories that are super dark with kind of like a sense of doom and you're probably going to lose, you would love this. It's very dark and the people all lose and kind of learn something about themselves. But you learn more about yourself reading it. Like, what do I care about? I guess.
And then you get to the movie part of it, which they have to movify it because in a movie, if you don't provide feelings, people really hate that.
Yeah.
So they make her like actually fall in love with her husband, and that actually be a plot line. But once again, it's just a bunch of weird stuff that's weird.
See, I still really like this movie. It's super weird, but it does give more context for the characters. This was one of the first movies that I saw where I think it has an entirely female cast, and that's very rare for something that's like a science-y military type story.
Almost entirely female. There is one guy.
Oscar Isaac plays her lover. Yes.
Well, there are two guys, her lovers, and there's one guy that's interviewing her. So
that's right. I don't even count him as character. Was he really a character?
We're talking leading characters, all female leading cast.
So they go into this Area X, and it's like instead of being like, okay, it's creepy mold that writes weird esoteric poetry, which, let's be real, if you found mold that was scrawling like Edgar Allan Poe poems on your wall, that would be creepy as hell. It would be.
Yeah.
But
molding the Raven. Evermore.
I've watched that Netflix documentary about mushrooms. They have a whole secret life, okay?
Really? Great.
So anyway.
Mushrooms make poetry.
Not that we know of, but they talk to each other, and they share resources, and they like and don't like each other, and they evolve while we watch them. Anyway, so okay, so in the movie, this thing that has come, they like actually do a shot of like a comet hitting Earth. So it's extraterrestrial somehow. We just don't know like where extraterrestrial or why they're here. And it like warps things on a DNA level. So it like combines. So you have like deer running around that have plants growing out of them, not like on them, but like they have melded with the plants. And there's this like terrifying like bear pig thing that like has eaten a person and now has the person's voice.
And I hate shit that mimics shit.
Oh,
like no.
And all of it is just like, why? And so it's very, very creepy, and it's very, very ominous. And she gets out, but never really gets out. So the movie managed to make a weird, creepy story, actually a story kind of about how we face trauma, and then how sometimes we can't ever get, like, we are never going to be free of this trauma. It breaks us sometimes as people. We are forever changed. And in her case, it's implied she's no longer even human. Which that is compelling to me, because I think so often we want stories about trauma to be like, and everybody's fine, but sometimes people aren't. Mm-hmm. And that is something that can be hard to address with ourselves. But I think in story, we have this little safe bubble to like look at it and be like, oh, that's why my parents are the way they are. Or, oh, that's why I can't move forward from this moment in my life. So I think those kinds of stories can be helpful in small doses. If you just read that exclusively, I think it does weird things to your perspective. But
that's a very insightful, beautiful analysis of that movie, Chloe.
Oh, thank you. Well, and if you guys watched the movie and you liked it, or you liked anything about it, like this channel, Uncanny Prose, streams a D&D stream, and some of our Fey magic that we've imagined is kind of directly pulled from that idea of like other things coming here and mushing things together that shouldn't be, for no reason that people can tell. Yes,
I can vent here. You can. You can.
We are currently venting about Annihilation.
Wait until we get to Firestarter. I have a list.
Oh God. Well, I think that's gonna be the bulk of our thing. Jeez, that was mostly what I wanted to say about it. Ghost Floof, if you have strong feelings about Annihilation, let us know. Or other things. If you feel like you want to vent about other things, you can let us know as well.
We're here.
Yeah, I don't know, Erin, if you have any final thoughts on Annihilation.
I thought it was weird.
It was weird. It was very weird.
That's all I got. I thought it was weird. Opened my eyes to a new type of literature, so no regrets, but I was weird.
Oh boy. Okay, so moving on to Firestarter by Stephen King. Okay, so this book was written in the 80s.
Yes.
Which
it's
is
very obvious that it was written in the 80s because there are a lot of contextual little things that you slip in, little analogies and things like that, where if you read it today, you would be like, no. No.
It's kind of interesting because Stephen King has written so freaking much over so many decades. Like watching his fiction evolve is fascinating to me because he's gotten back to address some things that he's written that are problematic, which is always nice when an author is like, hey, I did that and that was not cool.
Yeah.
But okay, Erin, 30 seconds. What do you think this book was about?
Okay, so you got a dad named Andy. You got a kid named Charlie. Turns out the dad has some cool psychic-y stuff that he can do where he can push people into doing things. The push is very important. He and his wifey got experimented on without their knowledge, so they both kind of got some psychic-y powers.
But with their consent, they were poor college kids.
But they were being told, they were not told what they were being given. They were misled in that area. They're like, you're doing a clinical trial. They're like, great. What is it? And they're like, don't worry about it. You'll probably get water. Instead, they got psychic problems.
Very Vietnam era U.S. government. Let's be real.
Yeah. So, two psychic-y people who have been manipulated genetically by the government have a baby. Turns out that baby can start fires. She has pyrokinesis, also some other little psychic-y kind of things. And the entire book literally starts smack dab in the middle of the action of Andy and Charlie running from the government. And so that is the majority of this thing. They run. They accidentally burn down. Well, they don't accidentally, but they end up burning down a farmhouse. They get stuck in a government facility once they're caught. And there's a guy who's coming after them the entire time named Rainbird. Yeah. He is like assassin, but kind of like not official assassin. He's just really good at killing people. And he's also Native American. That is a big thing that goes on throughout the thing. But yeah, he's the mastermind throughout the entire book because it kind of makes the government look like bumbling idiots.
Yeah. That's kind of a big theme. I'd say the biggest themes that I pulled out from this was like how on like a family level, how do we pass on trauma to our kids? And then how do we deal with it? Do we like let them work through it or do we try to just make them ignore it? Because dad does both of those things with his daughter.
Yeah. Very confusing to be that child.
Oh, so confusing. And then I think the other strong theme is like very, very a lot of distrust of authority figures and the government, as would have been, it was written like in the Vietnam era. So of course, everybody was like, we don't trust the government. We don't like the government. That felt very similar. And they didn't like the government for different reasons than we don't like the government today, but it also still the same thing. It was still like conspiracy theories about what the government was doing to people and not informing people and whatnot.
Ghost Floof has read it.
Yep.
Ghost Floof, yeah, Rainbird, Stealer assassin. Yeah, he's a master manipulator. Yeah.
So okay, so we're gonna start with the book.
Yes.
And then we'll move on to discussing the movie, which just came out this year, with Zac Efron in it. Why we thought we needed to redo something that had
Drew Barrymore in it.
I don't know, but we did. We thought that was a good idea. It's okay. It's okay.
Mostly them.
Okay, so the book. So the historical context of this book adds a lot of what?
By the way, Ghost Floof has not read it. That was they were merely reiterating me. Sorry, continue, Chloe. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yes. Oh, also Ghost Floof. I'm seeing Power Stealer Assassin. He's not really in the book. Rainbird doesn't have powers. He just hates the government because he was a Vietnam vet and got left there by the government to die.
Yeah.
/ was experimented on himself. He really doesn't like the government, but he works for them because it is convenient, and he's actually kind of hoping for a way to embarrass them.
Yeah. He's a very, very interesting character. I definitely want to go on about the difference between him in the book and the movie.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I got real strong like Stranger Things vibes from the book. If any of you guys have seen this latest season 4 of Stranger Things, where Elle is like going back to her lab and she is facing all the stuff that was done to her, and the government, there's like 2 voices in the government, one of them whom genuinely seems to kind of care about her, and the other of whom is just like, no, we have to study you. It was very reminiscent of that, and I was like, oh, it feels so familiar.
Ghost Floof, this is not a channel where we come up with new novel concepts. This is where we vent. We compare novels and their adaptations on screen or television or whatever, and then we vent about them because usually they are not good. We do not create new books. Sorry, if you were looking for writing inspiration.
I still recommend reading Stephen King because he has written so many things.
Yeah.
And we have not done manga and anime yet, mostly because I have not had enough time to watch an entire season of manga or anime, because that's some of the big ones require a lot of time. Although that is actually a thing we have discussed.
Yeah.
So the book, historical context. I think that might be all that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
The 80s are having a revival, and so reading the book felt very familiar. That was basically it. You do see in the book treatments of race and gender, and even some pretty serious stigmatization of like trans tendencies that are very, very reminiscent of the times.
Mm-hmm.
How Rainbird is written, how the women in the book are written. In fact, there aren't really any women in the book. It's actually, now that I'm saying it, I don't think there are. It's his wife who's dead, and the girl.
No. There is the girl. There's the wife. There is Irv's wife. And then there is, very briefly mentioned at the end, the new leader of the secret organizer.
Oh yeah, who's also a woman.
Yeah, who's also a woman. Which I was like, you snuck that in there very sneakily, Sir King. Very nice.
But it's interesting to me because I tend to read pretty contemporary stuff just for my own. So doing this exercise and being like, I'm going to read older things, it gives me a lot of context for all the people who are like, there's no women written in these stories. Because like, oh wait, there's actually not.
Who's also, yes. So this is going, I'm going to start doing some comparisons because this is the main thing that got me. So I noticed in the book versus the movie, I think they were trying to correct some of the things that could be viewed as problematic or maybe unsavory in the book, in to change it in the adaptation. One of the things that got me kind of in a big way, which I'm not sure whether I like it or dislike it. So in the book, Charlie is a little girl. She's like, what? She starts off like 7 years old, right? And ages up.
I think she's 8 to 11.
8 to 11.
In the book, yeah.
So the first, like right from the start, you have this 8-year-old girl who is scared, running from people she does not know. She does not know why. Like, she doesn't understand what's happening. All she knows is that she can do this thing. She can start fires. It's not normal.
And it's not good.
And it's not good. That's the whole thing, is that she is afraid of it because she has hurt her mother before, and she was kind of,
well, and her father has taught her to
purposely traumatized as a child into believing this is a bad thing. You do not do this thing. Because as a baby, obviously, she couldn't control it, which is, kind of,
her parents were terrified of her.
Yeah. And so instead of, because, a baby can't understand, her dad just took this charred teddy bear that she had set on fire because she was a mad little toddler and shoved it in her face like you would like a dog. It kept being compared to like toilet training, of like, you've got to teach them not to do it. But as the book goes on, her dad is like bending the rules again, where he's like, oh, there are these bad men coming back to us. Use this power. It's not bad now because of this thing. He kept bending the rules, and it was just obvious how confusing and conflicting it was for this little girl who doesn't understand what's happening. You get to the movie, and the little girl is a total badass. She starts off, she's like, oh, this is bad. But as soon as her dad is taken by the government, she starts practicing and she goes in. Imagine this was
48 hours too, which that kind of bothered me.
It was 48 hours. And even though she is a little girl with like psychic powers, she was able to travel across the country and find the people who had her dad and like manipulate them into getting her where she wanted to go. It was so unreal to me, because I'm like, listen, I understand.
They wanted it to be like an X-Men movie, which was what I got.
I also kind of like wondered if it was because they were like, because in the book, she is a little girl and there are these two fatherly figures that she has, Andy, her real dad, and then once she's trapped in like a government cell per se, Rainbird, who is the mastermind behind everything, comes in and decides to befriend her because he knows she's alone, and then, he can manipulate her. So you have a little girl with a lot of power who is essentially following everything these two male figures in her life say.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Versus in the movie, you've got this tough little girl who's doing literally everything all by herself. And it was one of those things where I'm like, yay, woman empowerment, but also like, she's a little girl.
I thought that the change was abrupt in the movie and unearned, because she does start out angry, but kind of weak. Like, I liked seeing her. I liked in the movie that they had her like around other children, so you could kind of emphasize how weird it was. I thought that worked as a decision to like show, not tell, how she's struggling internally, because she doesn't like being alone. She doesn't like not being normal, but she's kind of weak and has a lot of power, but doesn't have the ability to like focus it. And she's kind of whiny in those opening scenes. It read to me like whiny. Whereas in the book, she was frightened, but she was never whiny, and she was very, very calculating. When adults would tell her to do things, we would get the description of what she was thinking and how she was making the decision of whether to trust this person or not.
Yeah.
And because the book spans several years, since we get her, and once she gets captured by the government, she stays there for a while. She grows as a person, as one would from 8 to 11, to kind of get her own idea of what she wants to do with these powers. And for a while, she just completely shuts it down, and she is more stubborn than any adult around her by choice. And it's not until she starts getting emotionally manipulated by Rainbird that she lets it go. But even then, she lets it go in a way that she thinks is smart, because she's a child and she doesn't realize that this person who is using the psychology of a father figure to get her to trust him.
So in the book, she is definitely a more logic, thought-based character versus the movie, where she is like 100% willpower.
Right. Which it's harder to show that thought process in an adaptation.
Yeah, it's true. It's very, very true. It's very difficult to show how smart someone is. Let me go back to my notes. Oh, yeah. Starting off in the beginning of the movie, when she was being bullied, because that was the way that they showed, her outcastness. I wanted her to set the bully's shoes on fire, like, real quick.
Yeah.
I did not get that satisfaction.
No, I know. She wasn't a vindictive child yet. She became a vindictive child, which was another thing that I thought was weird. Like, yes, I think you're right. I think they were going for female empowerment, but it was weird because it was like, did we want her to be vindictive? And then they pulled the punch at the end where she gave Rain Man another shot.
Yeah, I have so many problems with the end.
I was like, okay, so we went from whiny girl to powerful girl who's gonna burn it all down, which I was like, okay, I can get behind burning it all down. Let's just do this. Now she's the bad guy. She has become the fulfillment of what these people said she was. But no.
What killed me?
Gonna go off with her abuser.
Okay, so in the movie, in the book, Rainbird is this mastermind, smarter than the government and all of the scientists they hired. Brilliant. Like, he is a bad guy, but he's a brilliant, intelligent bad guy. Yes. And then when you get to the movie, he is just an assassin. Like, he is just a heavy guy. They take out all the brilliant logic that he has and just turn him into
his reason for being interested in this girl.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that pissed me off in a big way, because I was wondering, it was another one of those things where I was wondering if, in the same way that they didn't want to make this weak little girl, they wanted it to change it over into like a woman empowerment thing, if they didn't want to make a Native American into the bad guy, like it has been historically done.
Right. Yeah.
Because in the end, like throughout the entire movie, he's a bad guy. He's hunting down these people to kill, but in the end, he gets a second chance from this girl who she has seen his face. That
she knows he murdered her mother, like murder.
Yeah, murdered, and has been trying to kill her on multiple accounts, her and her dad. But in the end, she gives him a break, and then the random ending is that at the end, when she's all worn out and done setting fires, this man...
I was waiting for her to just walk into the ocean.
I wanted that too. But she just collapsed on the beach, and then Rainbird picked her up and carried her away. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What can an assassin do with a child he was supposed to be hunting down? Like, are you going to take care of her now? Because there was zero, like, this bugged me, because right from the jump start, there's this whole arc that Rainbird goes through, where once he has captured her, he turns into John the Friendly Orderly. So
Right.
Charlie had never seen his face, never knew that he was after her. And then when she's alone and vulnerable, he like comes in and is her friend. And she grows to trust him. And there's this fatherly space that he fits into. Versus as soon as they start, she has seen his face. She knows that he kills her mom. She keeps seeing him. I'm like, so John the Friendly Orderly is not happening in this movie?
Which was a shame because that was a great storyline. Also, sorry, I think I'm desynced, guys. Ugh. Am I desynced, Aaron?
A little bit.
A lot.
There you go.
Sorry, guys. This happens occasionally. My computer is very hot and it's telling me no.
No. Well, it bugged me that, like, yes, this indigenous man in the book was the bad guy, but he was a brilliant bad guy.
I was going to say exactly. He was a very well crafted character.
Yeah,
with very clear motivations and wants, and just a brilliant, powerful bad guy that took a lot to defeat.
Yeah. And he was smarter than the freaking government. Yeah. Like, the government were chumps in the book. They were so stupid. I have problems.
I think it was a great portrayal of like the folly, like the hubris when you have a tool like the US military. I think that's probably a lot of the commentary that was going on there. And I think it's real appropriate because a lot of times when you're like, we've got all this fancy money and we have all of these great troops and blah, 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 like nothing has to be excellent because we just have so much of it. You get burned when you do that. Like you have to stay on top of things and you have to realize people are actually smarter than you expect them to be.
Yeah. The other thing that made me mad was that in the book,
comparison of the sorry. You know what, guys? Let me try restarting this. We'll see.
Oh goodness.
I did boof. Okay. Hold on 1 second and we are going to be right back.